He's Mike Summits. I'm Jason Fitz filling in. It is The Handle, presented by DraftKings. We got a stacked day, and I know you hear that all the time. But today particularly, with the NBA action that's in front of us, is going to be exciting. Plus, we have an interesting Masters. Everything I thought we might not get, we're getting some drama. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Mike, how are you this morning, brother?
Oh, I'm doing great. We got a spicy Masters final round. I'm excited. There's still 5, maybe 6 guys you could make a case for that are in contention. And you mentioned the NBA. I love what they're doing today. Huge day for playoff seeding. A couple really key games that will kind of create important matchups in other places. But the fact that we've got every Eastern Conference team tipping off at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and then every Western Conference team tipping off early in the afternoon really sets up an interesting slate. It's almost like the Premier League where you have everybody playing at the same time. They won't know exactly where they're slated or where they're going to be seated heading into the playoffs until they kind of see what happened in these other games. The scoreboard watching is going to be interesting. The halftime adjustments and decisions is going to be interesting. And the market specifically, I thought, has been very interesting here. We're seeing multiple teams that have been steamed up that are double-digit favorites that need to win today for playoff seeding. I'm not so sure you just want to jump on that because I don't want to lay 13, 14 points when all a team needs to do is win and you're paying a premium on what the price was.
Yeah, I've got some pretty staggering numbers that show how important today is for the NBA. We'll get into that. But I also want to give you some flowers, brother, because yesterday I was texting you after the show. I'm telling you, man, I got an education yesterday on the ponies. And the first thing I thought today when I woke up is, man, I can't wait for pucks and ponies today because I'm telling you, like, you were spot on. Like, you're onto something here. Like, look, I know it's obviously what you do and why you're great, but it's just a little tip of the cap there is that I told all of my friends, like, I got a guy now. Like, I got a guy that's going to help us figure out the horses. This is a great day for you yesterday.
It's funny how everyone needs a guy in horse racing. I'm happy to be your guy with that, Jason. Yeah, it was phenomenal. Encino ran very well, took to the dirt just like we discussed. We got $8 to win on the horse. The exacta hits for us, a $10 exacta. The pucks and ponies segment has been absolutely on fire. Hockey came through yesterday as well. The Bruins get it done by 2, and we talked about the strategy around pulling the goalie early. That was a huge factor in that cover for the Bruins. They were up 5-3 with about 4 minutes left. We saw Pittsburgh pull their goalie with close to 4 minutes left in that game. Boston able to get an empty netter, make it 6-3, and then we didn't really have to sweat that last final couple minutes there. So you still have to pay attention, especially with these teams that are chasing playoff points. They're going to be much more aggressive pulling their goalie. If you're going to play against them, I love the idea of playing the puck line at that -1.5.
I was in a bar last night, admittedly, in Nashville, as the Preds were on TV and as we were watching some hockey, and everybody screamed at the empty net goal at one point. And I said, you know exactly what kind of crowd you're at if everybody's yelling for the empty netter. I'm just telling you, it makes a difference in all of this. By the way, you mentioned earlier, Wes, the timing of some of the NBA tip-offs, West Coast, best coast for sports. I mean, you just wake up, you have it at 10 a.m. It's a beautiful thing. All right, let's start. It's only we can only be the ones that do this with all this energy. Let's get you started.
All right, classic. High five.
It's time for the Handles High Five.
High five. All right.
Number 1.
5 things we're most excited about betting on. I could have set that up better. I'm just so excited to be hanging out with you. All right, so let's get to the top one on your list. I can't imagine what today you might be the most excited about betting on.
I mean, after yesterday, Jason, we know it's probably not number 1 on your list, but we're going to throw the Masters up here at number 1. We've got a great final round here. We talked about Morikawa 12-1 before the round started. Yesterday, he's 1 stroke back now of Scotty Scheffler. Going to be a great final grouping. We've seen the final groupings consistently win these Masters, and it's hard to really make up a ton of ground here on Masters Sunday, but we've got Homa sitting there at +750. We got Oberg sitting there +900. DeChambeau, I'd say he's like 4.5. People can compete, and DeChambeau is the one who's right on that cut line right now, 18-1. He's sitting 5 strokes back right now, but was able to 4 strokes back, but was able to hole out from 18 after really struggling putting the latter half of that round. He had multiple 3 putts on the back 9. He had one on 9 as well. He needs to figure out the putter. If he can get that going, he may be able to make a run here. It's interesting where we've seen these hole placements as well today. A lot more scoring available. It looks like the course is a little bit more moisture in it, so it's going to be a little more forgiving when you're approaching the green. So I think we're going to have a phenomenal final round of the Masters here. If you're not in yet, if I was going to bet one person at the top of the list, it would be Homa. I thought he played very well yesterday, and he did not take advantage of the par 5s. He had a birdie-free round, 1 bogey, 17 pars yesterday. If he can score on the par 5s and play the course like he did yesterday, I think he's got a shot at being dangerous in this spot.
Yeah, and by the way, a couple of things here. Yesterday, we pointed out DeChambeau can be a little bit inconsistent at times. What did we see yesterday? A little bit inconsistent at times. Plus, the other thing we screamed yesterday is that we're going to need some drama to get any value. Even Scheffler coming back to minus 115, at least we're getting better value than we were yesterday. So I think this is sort of a dream scenario for the Masters. We'll break a lot of it down, but we're going through all five, the high five things we're most excited about. Next up on the list.
Number 2.
What do you got for us here?
I mean, it's the NBA. We talked about this a little at the top, but just a phenomenal day in the NBA. We've got everybody in the East tipping off shortly. We've got everyone in the West tipping off later today. Pretty much the entire East is undecided. At this point, Orlando could end up as high as the 6th seed. They could end up losing the division, and in the play-in game, you've got the Bucks fighting for the 2, the Knicks and Cavs still alive there. The Eastern Conference is going to be wild with these 10 a.m. tip-offs. We'll see what ends up happening there and how this slots in. But it's very important for these teams to be able to be seated properly, and you want to make sure you have home court advantage, especially later in the rounds. A lot of key important games today. I do think it's a little tough to bet. And if you're going to bet the NBA today, highly recommend you head over to VSiN.com. JVT, Jonathan Von Topel, one of our NBA experts, wrote a phenomenal article about betting it today, specifically talking about in-game betting and trying to find spots where you're able to get teams that need to win at shorter numbers or at a good money line if they do fall behind early in these spots.
11 of the 15 games today have playoff implications, a staggering number. There are, as we sit right now, 16 different playoff scenarios in the East alone that will be decided today. Study your tiebreakers, y'all. Like, that's all I'm saying. Study your tiebreakers. All right, next up on the list.
Number 3.
What do you got next for us?
We're going to go to baseball. It was a fun day in baseball yesterday. Had a nice 3-in-1 day. That strikeout prop we talked about, that hit at plus 250. Don't have any funky props today, but do like a couple of the games. And again, because it's a Sunday here, you mentioned West Coast, best coast for sports. We've got a ton of games here early in the morning. The first pitch is before noon West Coast. So a lot of early action clears the way for the Masters final round to be able to watch that. I've got 5 bets coming from the Major League Baseball today, so I'm excited about talking about some baseball.
Yeah, and by the way, you got a huzzah in my house too when we got that strikeout. I'm just for no reason at all. Look, I was wild. It's always fun playing with you on that stuff, and I loved that bet. So congratulations on that one also. And by the way, again, you get up in the morning, you're still drinking your iced coffee, and there's sports on TV. That's far better than the East Coast where your honey-do list has already hit you by then. All right, what's next up on the list?
Number 4.
All right, what do we got next?
I'm going to be honest. I wanted to put this higher, but pucks and ponies don't get everybody going. It gets my blood pumping. The segment's been absolutely on fire the last couple of weeks. Excited to talk about both horse racing and hockey today. We saw Encino win the Lexington Stakes yesterday. We talked about him ad nauseum yesterday in this segment. He's now going to make the gate for the Kentucky Derby, and he becomes a very interesting horse in the Kentucky Derby because of what he was able to do yesterday. We talked about how it was the first time he was going on dirt. Well, it was the first time he went gate to wire as well, went straight to the front and showed a new dimension yesterday, which I think is incredibly beneficial for him moving forward to the Kentucky Derby. So excited to see what Encino's able to do moving forward, but got a couple nice horse bets today, including a 12-1 shot we like at Keeneland.
Look, I'm all in. I'm all in on the ponies. This is what's happened. And it took one show hanging out with you, and suddenly I'm wildly all in on this. So I cannot wait. We'll get you pucks and ponies. Don't fear there, because that was a spectacular work by you yesterday. We got one more in our high five coming at you.
Number 5.
Right, your fifth most, and look, this is only your fifth highest on the list because there are other good things today. What's next for you?
It's pretty wild when NFL comes in last on a betting card, but that's where we are. We are going to talk about a couple of the awards market today. We're going to play one of my favorite games that producer Stephanie put together around a bunch of the different awards, including Coach of the Year, MVP. We're having a little bit more draft talk too. I love talking draft with you yesterday, so I'm excited to jump into some of the first round props, including how many offensive players will be drafted, how many positional players will be drafted. And then again, the awards market, where I think there's some glaring mistakes right now sitting in that awards market. So looking forward to that one.
It's always interesting to me, too, because the best way to test all of this is to rewind to a year ago right now and see how wrong so many people were about so many teams, right? And I don't want to say that it's always glaring, but there are certain awards, for example, Coach of the Year. Every year we think Coach of the Year, a year in advance, is going to be somebody from this team that we expect to be good. Never is. Coach of the year is almost always from a team that we expect is going to be absolute hot garbage, and then somehow they rise up. So there is some nuance to this looking at it. Look, I don't think everybody can just sit here and say, I'm going to replicate what the Texans did. All you'd have to do is find the perfect coach with a quarterback that has a historic season, and you can replicate a quick turnaround. That being said, there is a ton of value because we are so often influenced by brands early on in the offseason. We're influenced by sort of the concepts, good and bad, of what we have of certain players, certain coaches. I think that's what's really interesting, is that the heart works more than the mind right now for the NFL. And that's where opportunity usually presents itself, right?
It is. And opportunity presents itself as well when you have a terrible favorite. And Jim Harbaugh right now, is the favorite for Coach of the Year. That just screams to me like someone that you want to bet against. It almost feels like the rest of the market in a way is vig free, because I don't see any way 6.5 to 1 is the right price on Jim Harbaugh. So I'm excited to talk about that Coach of the Year market. I do like someone there.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to find out who. And I'll use Harbaugh as the perfect example. When you already have a quarterback that gets benefit of the doubt on the street, and you have a team that annually has been considered to be a contender, what do you have to do to be Coach of the Year? You'd have to turn around and win 15 games to turn around and be Coach of the Year. By the way, that ain't going to happen. So I don't want to oversimplify, but this one's easy to me.
They would have to win the division. Good luck with that. The Chiefs are in your division. That ain't happening. So if they make the playoffs and they're 10-7, 11-6, that's not good enough to do it. And I don't see how they're going to be better than that. I think they're going to be significantly worse than that.
Yeah, we'll get you some of the ones that we like throughout the course of the day. But obviously, it is Masters Sunday. And like we said, there's drama and opportunity out there. So we'll break it all down for you with the latest of what's going on in Augusta coming up next. Stick with us. The Handle on VSiN.
This is The Handle with Matt Brown and Mike Summage on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
If you haven't already checked out the new and improved VSiN.com, what are you waiting for? We have enhanced tools like our betting splits and expert picks, and introduced innovative features like parlay and odds calculators, all designed to make you a sharper bettor. All you got to do is check out the new VSiN, VSIN.com. Today. He's Mike Summage. I'm Jason Fitz filling in. It is The Handle. All right, we talked about it earlier. Let's break it down again. We've got the Masters going on right now. And in full transparency, yesterday, I felt like we were a little bored with the Masters. There wasn't a lot going on that had everybody super excited. It feels like, though, today we're in a little bit different situation. We mentioned it at the top of the show, but when you look at the odds, you got Scheffler in right now, 7 under. Morikawa is in at 6 under, just 1 stroke back, and Homa's in at 5 under, just 1 stroke back of him. So we've got 2 strokes separating them. And realistically, look, all another name people love, DeChambeau sitting at 3 under. Feels like 4 strokes is a lot to make up, but there is some opportunity for value here, right? And to me, when I say that, one thing that I have to stress is that the numbers yesterday on Scheffler looked terrible. Like, it just didn't look like it was worth the investment, sort of boring. At least at minus 115, if you think he's going to win, that's not as just awful feeling as yesterday was, right?
No, I don't think so. Yesterday we saw he was plus 115 heading into that round. There was a 3-way tie for the lead. You've only lost 30 cents here on the price here on Scheffler, and now he has a 1-stroke lead, and you're really down to a 4.5 man tournament at this point. So minus 115, not a ridiculous price here in my mind. You're sitting there with plus 350 at Morikawa. I probably want a little bit more. The time to bet him was the previous round, or before the previous round on Saturday. He's been putting exceptionally well too, leading the field in strokes gained with his putter. He's going to need to keep that going today. And you got Homa sitting there at plus 750. To me, if I'm placing a bet before the round, I want to try and get a Sunday sweat. Homa is the guy that I'm going with here. He's played very consistent golf yesterday, but did not play the par 5s well. And that's a big key here when you're trying to score at Augusta National. He had 1 bogey, 17 pars yesterday. He's had a very good approach game all week. And he's playing with someone who I think is a little bit better matchup for him to play with. He's playing with Oberg today, who's a debutant in his first Masters here, trying to really shock the world and get the win. Yesterday was with DeChambeau, and DeChambeau can be a little bit more difficult person to play with, not necessarily because, he's not a nice guy, anything like that, but just with how aggressive he swings, how he drives. He's not the easiest guy to get out there on the course with. I think this is a better pairing for Homa today. I think he takes advantage of some of the par fives. I don't hate that plus 750 number.
Look, you said Sunday sweat. This is a much more like I went to Orange Theory this morning, ran for a bunch. Like that's the Sunday sweat I'm used to. But this feels like a more fun Sunday. Yeah, this is much more. This is much more fun. Something that you pointed out, and I also heard a little bit on Lombardi line that I think is smart too, is pin placement. For anyone that doesn't know, pin placement is different, right? And so today, given the pin placement and given the way we expect the greens to run, it feels like it could be a good scoring day overall, right? Like, and that impacts some of this too. Like, I think if we were looking back at Thursday, Friday, Saturday, some of the weather issues have calmed themselves down. A, B, guys have gotten really comfortable with the course as they usually do over the course of it. And C, the course is just going to be friendlier today. So I think we could see some really good scores.
Yeah, I'm not going to say they made the course easy today, but they definitely didn't make it as difficult as they have on Saturday specifically. And the elements on Thursday and Friday made it very difficult as well. We saw them water this course this morning, so you got a little bit more forgiving greens. You're going to be able to attack pins a little bit easier. And the Masters traditionally does make their pin placements a little easier on Sunday because they want those roars. They want the moments. And that is what we saw today. So you do have the opportunity to be able to go out there and put a 4-under, a 5-under round up. Now, I was listening to Wes on Lombardi line. He was talking about how hard it is to come back in this tournament. We haven't seen a winner by 4 or more strokes, or coming back from 4 or more strokes since the 90s. And the last one we saw was Nick Faldo, and that was when Norman collapsed. That was one person collapsing and someone taking advantage of it. When you've got, you've got Homa and you've got Morikawa and you've got Scheffler all up top, it's hard to foresee them all collapsing and allowing DeChambeau to be able to come up and get it, or Scheffler to come up and get it. So to me, this is a setup where I really think it's between those top 3 guys who have the best shot at it. I would love to see someone like Oberg win, but it's hard to believe that someone in their first Masters is going to be able to put on the green jacket.
I'm also torn on that because I do agree with you. That's a great story if he turns around and wins. But also, if we want at some point the next Tiger to be anointed, let's just acknowledge that somebody's got to dominate. Right. So Scheffler coming in, and as much as we say, well, he could be the next Tiger. All right. If you really want to solidify that conversation, you got to win a bunch of green jackets. Right. So that's got to start at some point in an overwhelming fashion. So that's the only, I hear you. I think it's a really interesting story, but also it's sort of win-win if Scheffler turns around and wins this thing, because everybody in golf is trying to anoint him to be the next. As much as I hate that concept, nobody's going to be the next Tiger. You do need, I think, somebody that's out there that's the hero that the villains are all trying to catch. Like the best Batman movies require a great villain. The best sports stories require somebody you're rooting for and somebody you're rooting against. And typically, to get to the point that you're rooting against someone, they got to be great, not just good. They got to be amazing. So maybe we get closer to that with a win here. That's all.
I wouldn't be shocked. And let's be honest, Scheffler has not played his best golf, and he's still leading this tournament by a stroke right now. And he's struggled putting every now and then. We could see that come up again. But he's able to just not make mistakes consistently, be able to score in that 70, 69, 68 range consistently. And that's what makes him so hard to beat. And that's really the difference between him and Tiger. Look, Tiger didn't make a ton of mistakes, but he was electric when he was on the course. You don't see that same energy from Scotty when he's out there. But having 2 green jackets in 3 years, not a bad way to kick off some dominance.
Maybe that's a new theory in championships, because I would argue the Chiefs didn't really play their best football much of the year, and they still won a championship. UConn in the tourney didn't shoot from the 3 the way anybody expected they would, and they had some foul issues and still dominated in ways that we've never seen. Maybe flawed champions are the new sort of thing that we should be looking at. Look, who has fatal flaws that they can get through? There are no fatal flaws, though, to the NBA today. I want to get to this a little bit because it's super important on the schedule. We mentioned it earlier. 11 of the 15 games today have playoff implications. This is much like, the NFL does this at the end of the year where they try and crowd as much together so there's suspense. You've got 16 playoff scenarios in the East. And I think your point earlier was an important one. So many games are tipping at the same time. You can't just hope that somebody's scoreboard watching and starts mailing it in at any point. The tie-breaking scenarios are wild. And because of the way they've timed the tip-offs, I think it's going to be a very intense day.
Oh, it will be. And all eyes in the East, which is your 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. East Coast time, is going to be on this Milwaukee and Orlando game. Currently, Milwaukee's sitting at the 2 with a win today. They book the 2. Most likely, the Knicks are the 3. Cleveland's the 4. Orlando could fall all the way from 5 down to the 7 or the 8 in the playoff seeding, or in the play-in tournament, depending on if they lose. So they need a win to be able to lock up that 5 seed as well. It's a massive game for both of those teams because Milwaukee wants home court against everyone but Boston. And the last thing Orlando wants to do after this phenomenal season where they've kind of hit the skids a little bit lately is to fall down into that playoff game. But if Orlando loses and Miami wins, the Heat are your division champions and they are in the playoffs, whereas Orlando falls out into that play-in tournament. That game is going to decide how a lot of these others are kind of set up. Cleveland's sitting at the 4, huge favorites today. They're benching pretty much everybody. That's the other thing you got to pay attention here. Who is going to actually play in some of these games? Because you do have some teams that have decided they're going to rest players. Cleveland, one of those teams. They would need a win and a Knicks and Bucks loss to be able to jump all the way up to the 2. That seems unlikely in this spot.
Yeah, but even sometimes guys not play. I mean, look, Memphis has made sort of a joke about the injury list at this point. I think they've got 47 players on it every single night. And they still managed last night to give the Lakers everything they could handle, right? So it is interesting to me that even the teams that are sitting this late in the season, you can't rely on. But one thing you just said really stands out to me. Like, we look at the Heat and say, my God, how could this version of the Heat is not the Heat that we usually know. And somehow, some way, they could sneak their way into the playoffs. But then we look at Orlando, who's in the same sort of seeding proximity, and say, man, it feels like a fail if they end in the play-in, because now it's one game for a young team to figure out how they stand in that. The way we perceive two teams that are very similar in the standings is wildly different because of what we've seen from them in the past and the expectations we had day one coming into the season. Orlando's ahead of schedule. So it's the most condescending thing we say in sports when we're like, oh, it's cute, they're ahead of schedule. But that's real for the Magic. I don't want to see the Magic in a play-in because all of a sudden you got a young team in a play-in game. You just don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I don't want to see him in a play-in game either. I bet him 175-1 to win the title. So I would love to get him in there in that 5 seed to get Cleveland in the first round, because that'd be a great matchup for Orlando. I think they cruise if that ends up being the matchup. The Heat get so much. They get a pass in a lot of scenarios because of Heat culture, because of what we've seen in the playoffs the last couple of years. I'm not willing to give this Heat team a pass. I don't think this is the same Heat team that we've seen the last couple of years. They're not nearly as talented. They don't have as many options offensively. Spoelstra's still the best 7-game series coach in the NBA. That is inarguable at this point. But the rest of the talent on that team just not up to what we've seen the last 2 years.
Yeah, well, and to your point, at some point you can be a great coach, but a great coach isn't always a great magician. And at this point, asking Spoelstra to turn around and turn this team, this version of the Heat, into anything, I have a sneaking suspicion if the Heat advance, the story will all be about how we didn't think they'd be there. It's a heavy lift. Wow. And when they run out of gas and get eliminated, it'll be, I can't believe they made it that far, right? Like, that's where we are with the Heat, which is a much different conversation, versus the Magic, who I got to stress this, as a young team, I think the playoff experience is huge for not just where they are right now, but for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Playoff basketball is so different. Let's see how it plays out. One thing I can promise you is we're going to keep an eye on all of the NBA action, because it is fantastic. If you're my age, you know exactly what that reference is. All right, we'll keep it coming. But in the meantime, we got to take a look at some of the slate coming up in Major League Baseball. We'll do that next. Stick with us on VSiN.
This is The Handle with Matt Brown and Mike Summage on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
For a limited time, we're offering 2 weeks of our exclusive betting splits for free. Just sign up at VSiN.com/splits. The VSiN betting splits page is updated with DraftKings odds every 5 minutes. So you can see changes in all the action. Find out where the public's betting based on the number of tickets and where the money doesn't match the public opinion. You can check out not just today's action, but future events as well. Take advantage of this limited time offer. Visit VSiN.com/splits to claim your free 2-week access to VSiN's betting splits. Don't strike out on potential winnings. Visit VSiN.com/splits and start making smarter baseball bets today. He's Mike Summich. I'm Jason Fitz. To handle, man, VSiN.com/splits is just difficult for me to say. Like, I want to be a professional. but it's just slash splits is very, it's a tongue twister for me. I'm trying my best.
It is a tough one. You did a wonderful job with the promo. Don't worry about it. And this is one of those tools where I think it can be very beneficial for some bettors. For me, I'm not someone who leans on the splits and will make bets sheerly because of the splits, but I think it's a great thing to go and look at and see, okay, did I miss something here? Are we seeing a large percentage of the money with a low ticket count on a game? If so, I want to go back and look at that game. So for me as a bettor, the betting splits isn't something where I consider a holy Bible, but it is something that will push me to games that maybe I want to take a second look at or validate the opinion that I have heading into the bet.
Yeah, that's a smart approach because so much of this isn't about any one thing. And I think especially for anybody that's whatever level of betting you're at, whether you're brand new to it and you barely understand point spreads, or whether you're into prop bets and you're just sort of graduating to the next level, or if you're deep in the weeds with all of it, I think you realize at every stage that the way to grow to the next stage is to add more to your toolbox, right? And the more things in your toolbox, the better. And I say toolbox really intentionally because the first time you ever try to build something, you realize that you have like a power screwdriver and you think you're God. And then all of a sudden you realize you need a power saw. And then you get the power saw. And then all of a sudden you need a different kind of saw. And then all of a sudden you know it, you've got a full garage full of tools that are helping you build something. I think betting, especially sports betting in the modern culture, is more and more of that. It's not about any one tool. It's about as many as possible, and then finding the tools that you like the most in the moment. I'll again give you credit for yesterday with the ponies, and then say very loudly, that's not an area of expertise for me. So for me, watching it yesterday and thinking, wow, this is exciting. Now you take that information, you say, okay, how do I gather more info on it? How do I read and research on it? How do I improve my toolbox on it? And then decide if I want to start dabbling in it. It's like a whole process, right? Like it's easy for you if you've been doing it forever. It's easy to sit there and say, well, this is how it's done. But I think for a lot of people, you just got to constantly analyze your process as much as your result.
Oh, yeah, you have to analyze the process, figure out if you have closing line value, if you're ahead of the market moves, if you're not, and understand why you are ahead or why you're behind those specific market moves. And for me, this is all about information gathering. And you can get that information from podcasts. You can get it from your own algorithm. You can make your own numbers. You can get it from past performance in specific bets where you have performed well. There's a bunch of places to get at that information, and the splits is another one that you can do that. And you want to then take all that information, aggregate it, and then make smart decisions and make better decisions over the long term.
And you want to do it all with some level of control and understanding for risk. I always have to remind everybody that. All right. So we're looking at the Major League Baseball slate. We were looking at the NBA slate. We'll get back to that, I should say, in a minute. But we got a bunch of games starting early today. I know you're excited about this slate. I know you're excited about first 5 innings. We talked a little bit about that yesterday, but there's some that stand out to you today. What do you see in this Brewers-Orioles matchup that you like?
This is the game I'm most excited about today. We got Corbin Burns heading to take on, well, they're at home, but they're taking on the Brewers. So he gets to take on his old team today. This is a Brewers team that moved him to the Orioles in the offseason. I thought that was a great pickup for a young Orioles team that needed more frontline pitching. We got Ray going on the mound for the Brewers here. I think you're going to see a very motivated Burns, who's pitched phenomenally so far this year already. He's a 2-0 with a 1.93 ERA, someone that a lot of people like for that AL Cy Young Award going into the season. Ray has pitched well, too. He's 2-0 with a 1.64 ERA. This is a Orioles offense that has not been hitting the baseball as much as I think a lot of us expected early in the season. I love the look at under first 5 here. We're going to go under 4.5 runs first 5. I think both pitchers have a positive matchup in this spot. I don't think we're going to see a ton of runs, so let's take that first 5 under 4.5, Jason.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned yesterday when you get to the bullpen, it gets tricky. But if you see even on the graphic, the run total here on this is 8.5. I thought that was high considering the pitching matchup that we have. Now, I understand first 5 is much smarter way for anyone that doesn't know. You're really basically in that first 5 innings, you're focused on, hey, starting pitcher versus starting pitcher. You can't control if somebody gets pulled early, but you have the most control over the variable which is who's going to be pitching and who are they pitching against. 8.5 felt a little heavy to me for a run total on this. So, yeah, 4.5 in the first 5 feels heavy to me also.
Yeah, I wouldn't play the over, that's for sure. And one of the reasons I always go toward first 5 unders is the rules setup that we've seen in Major League Baseball. Since we went to the extra innings rule where you have a runner start on second and both the top and bottom half of the inning, you are seeing consistently that there are more runs scored in the 10th, in the 11th inning in these games. If I'm looking at taking an over, I'm playing full game. I want to take advantage of that rule change. If I'm looking at playing an under, I'm never playing a full game under. I want to take advantage of the pitching matchup, which is the main thing I'm handicapping, but also the rules setup in Major League Baseball and not having to deal with those extra inning rules.
Now, speaking of offenses that, sometimes struggle, we get to be kind to offenses that are hot garbage because it helps everybody make money. But Royals Mets, and every time I say the Mets, I just there's a part of me that cringes for Mets fans. I'm sorry, y'all, you deserved better. This is just the way life is going to go, which means we're going to find ways to monetize the Royals Mets. I know you've got some stuff here you like. What do you see in this matchup?
Yeah, we're going back to the well. This is the one loser in baseball yesterday. We took the under 4.5 first 5 with Royals Mets. I think they scored 18 runs in the first 5 innings. So you know what? It still counts as a 1-unit loss. You don't have to worry about how bad you lose. We're going back to the well, though, here. We're going back to that first 5 under in this spot. I'm a big Reagans guy. He's on the hill for the Royals. I think he's got a huge amount of upside. People comparing him to a left-handed DeGrom essentially before the season started. And then we got Butu on the mound for the Mets in this spot. He is a pitcher who is a high strikeout but high walk pitcher, doesn't go very deep into games. I was looking at possibly just taking the Royals here first 5 minus the half run. You can get that at plus 125, but I decided to go with the under because this is a Royals offense that has not been as electric with their bats early in the season, and this is a Mets team that's really struggled to put runs on the board. On top of that, both these teams hit very well yesterday. I think we regressed back to the mean with 2 offenses that I'm not really all that scared of, and 2 pitchers that are able to strike people out, which I think is huge when you're playing these first 5 unders, and then also don't give up home runs. In 8 appearances, Butu only gave up 3 home runs last year. He's a strikeout and inning guy. That helps you get out of jams as well. So let's take this first 5 under here, Royals Mets, 4.5 runs.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too when you said we're going back to the well. Look, remember in high school, if you were in a big math class, you couldn't just write the answer. You had to show your work. Pre-calculators, kids, look it up, right? You had to actually show all of your work on the paper. I say all the time, whether we're talking about sports takes or whether we're talking about sports betting, all we can do is show the work and trust that process. The work was right on why the logic was there yesterday. It just didn't turn out. It turned out it didn't win. That doesn't change the logic going into today's matchup. So totally on the same page with you there. What about the Tigers? I know you're hot on Detroit today. What you got?
I am. Look, we got a high variance pitcher for Detroit on the mound. Flaherty, he blows up or he pitches phenomenal. We're going to hope that he pitches phenomenal today, taking on the Twins. Last game was a little bit of a blow up for him, but he's someone who I think is one of those pitchers where we've seen him have success in the majors in past years. I think he's going to be able to replicate some of that success this year after having a healthy spring training, being able to come into the season here on a good note. On the other side, you've got the Twins. They got Ober on the mound. He's not very good. He's got a 12 ERA this year. He wasn't very good for them last year. And this is a Tigers team that has surprised so far. They're 8-6 on the young season. They were supposed to be the basement dwellers in a bad AL Central division, and that clearly is going to be the White Sox. They've been frisky with their bats. This is the Tigers team I'm looking to back because I don't think the market is quite caught up with how well they are playing at this point. So we'll take the Tigers here as a short favorite, lay the minus 115.
And it's interesting because so much of what you've talked about so far has been strength in pitching for both of these teams in this particular matchup. There's been regrettable pitching. So the question is that a consistent issue that they're going to have, or is that just a bit of a one-off? So we'll see on that. Give me other early games you've got your eyes on. What do you like here in the Reds, White Sox?
Look, I want to lay it with the Reds again. We laid it with the 1.5 with the Reds yesterday. Cashed a nice plus money price on them. Right now, they're plus 102 if you lay the 1.5. This White Sox team is atrocious. I don't think people realize how bad this White Sox team is. They are 2-12 on the young season. Soroka on the mound for him. He's not very good. The problem is it's Grant Ashcroft Day in Cincinnati, and he also not very good. I look toward the over. I'm like, hey, we got two bad pitchers. My numbers made this 8.9, so right on the 9 total, and I just don't know what I'm going to get from this White Sox team. They're the issue here. Yesterday, we saw the Reds win 5-0. The Reds did their job to get to the over. The White Sox did not. I'm concerned we see something similar today. I lean pretty heavily to the Reds. I haven't been able to get this one in the account, though. Can't quite get to the window right now.
I just love the fact that you said, I don't know what we're going to get from the White Sox today. We do know we're going to get bad baseball. Like that we can be
guaranteed.
Sure of. The White Sox are going to give us bad baseball. Real quick, Rockies, Blue Jays. I know you like that one there too. What do you got your eye on?
I haven't played anything here, but man, it feels like this is a bounce back spot for the Blue Jays. They've struggled with the Rockies in this series. They need to get this game here. The problem is it's minus 1.5 at home, which I absolutely hate laying the 1.5 at home because you lose the bottom of the 9th inning, and if you do go to extras, you need a 2-run homer to be able to cover the number. But, man, it feels like this is a game where the Blue Jays are able to get theirs. Maybe look at a first 5 run total. You get Blue Jays, first 5 team total, 2.5. Take the over there. But this feels like a get-right spot for Toronto.
All right, we'll keep the Major League Baseball breakdowns coming. But in the meantime, we are on the precipice of a huge day in the NBA. Action everywhere. We'll figure out where the best spots are and figure out what it means, not just for today, but the playoffs next. Stick with us on VSiN. Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook. an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code VSiN, VSiN. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code VSiN, VSiN, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. We're going to figure out how to give out a crown today. I don't know if we're going to make that happen somehow, some way, because basketball. It's a huge day in the NBA as everything comes down to this. Justin Fensterman, a.k.a. Fensty, lead NBA analyst for Fantasy Guru, host of Elite Sports Game Time, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy. Follow him at Fensty Sports. That's easy for me to say. Fensty and Fitzy should be a show. I'm just going to make this thing happen. All right. Fensty, we have been talking just a little bit about the day overall. So before we get into any of the specifics, just where you like if there's one game today that you look at that you are the most excited for, from it can be betting, it can be from what it means for the playoffs, for fantasy, it doesn't matter. The one game that you're like, God, I cannot wait for it is.
I mean, if it has to be Miami, Toronto for me, because Miami has something to play for, and because all these other games are in flux with the many players that are out. This one we seem to have a little bit of an edge on because the Heat can volume produce. Again, they need this win at this point here. And even with Toronto pretty much playing no one, their defense in the interior is just so bad. That's why even to just parlay some of these props, I like the Heat's front court today for some action.
Yeah, we have a Cavaliers team that's coming in, and they're doing exactly what you're talking about. They're not playing anybody. They seem to be locked into the 4 seed. There's a scenario where they can win, get a couple losses, get as high as the 2, but we're not going to see Mitchell today, not going to see LeVert today. But you do like some Jared Allen props from that spot. Tell us about him.
Absolutely, and it's kind of weird to me that you won't play those guys with a chance to get to the 2 seed like Donovan Mitchell, but you'll still play your front court, including Evan Mobley, guys. It's a bit suspicious because the guy has been like Mr. Glass for half the year, and he's always getting hurt. So it's just with him, I don't understand why he's playing. But with Jarrett Allen today, we've seen this before from him. Jarrett Allen should have no problem whatsoever getting inside. His point prop being as low as it is at 15.5 that I saw this morning, I was like, are you crazy? And the reason why I like that is because even if Jarrett Allen ends up playing 28, 29 minutes, he can still get this. He's been a scoring machine. I've been alt-lining, parlaying them a lot lately with his scoring, bringing that number down. It's normally been at 17.5. Today I saw it on DraftKings at 15.5, and I love the over on that, guys. We know what Jarrett Allen can do, and with none of their scoring guards available today, or very limited action for their scoring guards, there's no Donovan Mitchell, the offense is going to be featuring him a little bit more.
All right, so we've made the joke repeatedly about baseball on this show that bad teams can be good opportunities because, hey, if we make money, they're not bad. That being said, the Pistons and the Spurs are bad. So give me some, when you look at this game, what stands out to you?
I mean, the one player that stands out is a player that I've been cashing on because I've been going after his rebounds, guys. I don't know if you could say this 5 times fast. Sandro Mamukelashvili has been somebody who has been rebounding a lot, and with no Victor Wembanyama, he's going to have the post all to himself. And even if Duran ends up going, he ends up playing, I know he was questionable, it's still a great spot when it comes from a pace standpoint. Neither of these teams play any defense. The Pistons won't be crashing any kind of rebounding outside of maybe Duran. So Mamukelashvili should once again be able to grab a huge volume of boards. They've been keeping the number from us, guys. So my anticipation is in the next hour or two, maybe it's come out in the last few minutes. If it's at 9.5, I'm taking the over. If it's at 10.5 at plus money, would also consider the over. I don't think the books would dare put it at 8.5. But if they do, guys, we're smashing that over and we're cashing out.
I can't even say that name one time slow. So we're not even going to try and say it 5 times fast here. We're just going to let you nailed it. You did a great job. We're going to move on from that one. Let's talk a little bit about the play-in games here. I think the NBA has really hit a couple home runs over the last 2 years. The play-in, phenomenal. The in-game tournament, I thought, went very, very well for them in their inaugural year this year. Let's say we don't see any change in these play-in matchups in both the Eastern and Western conferences. Who are you leaning toward to get out and get those 7 and 8 seeds?
Yeah, I mean, for now, the East seems pretty easy because if it stands right now with Philadelphia as the 7, Miami as the 8, thinking that Philadelphia probably wins that matchup, or no matter who wins, I don't think Chicago or Atlanta will be able to beat whoever wins in that one, beat either of those losers, the Philadelphia 76ers or the Miami Heat. So I think the 7 and the 8, the way they stand right now, if that's how it ends after today, they're going to be going on to the playoffs after winning in the play-in tournament. On the West side, that's where things get very tough to prognosticate, because here's what I would say. As of right now, this moment, I'm thinking that the Phoenix Suns and I'm thinking that the Los Angeles Lakers are going to sneak out of there. The Suns, I'm thinking very good at that point. The Lakers, it's going to be close for them, but I'm thinking that they're going to be able to, even if they lose, end up having to play, let's say, the Kings or the Warriors. I think the Lakers have a little bit more toughness, muscle against the Warriors. And as for Sacramento, I don't like their defense outside of Domantas Sabonis, and Anthony Davis would neutralize them anyway. But I'll say this, guys, in that scenario, I have the Suns and the Lakers advancing. If the Pelicans end up getting pushed down, which is entirely possible, then it's a different story. Then I would go with the Lakers and Sacramento there, thinking Sacramento would be able to put their offense together and be able to use the pace against the Pelicans.
As long as the Lakers make the playoffs, the collective sigh we will feel is the league office saying, thank God. All right. So who wins the East? And if it's not Boston, who else do you like out there?
Man, it's hard to go up against Boston, guys. It really is. I mean, they've had a double-digit lead on the rest of the conference for a reason. They've got the best depth. They've got the best roster composition. It's the perfect puzzle when they're at full strength. But if there was one team going in that I thought could beat them, the Philadelphia 76ers could be that team. But what will Joel Embiid's knee health be at the time? We saw him tweak it the other night. His first game back, he was definitely favoring it a little bit. In the words of Marv Albert, I was saying on my show as I was going over Embiid's return, I said, he's starting to limp noticeably, because that was happening the entire time he was in that game. So it's all going to come down to that. So I'm a lot less confident in them. I want to give the Cleveland Cavaliers their due, and they played good defense. I just don't see it. I don't see them beating Boston. So I'd say the Sixers going in. I don't think the Bucks are going to beat them either, because the Bucks don't play good enough defense to compete with them in a 7-game series.
Now, the West is awfully interesting as well. And you mentioned the Pelicans, and they're in just a brutal spot here, because they right now would draw Denver as the 6-3 matchup, a terrible matchup for the Pelicans. But if they fall into the play-in game, you don't really want to be there either, even though I would argue taking on Minnesota, Oklahoma City, a much better matchup for this Pelicans team. So they're sitting right on the cusp right now in that 6-7 spot. I don't think the Suns, the Pelicans, the Warriors, any of these play-in teams have a shot at knocking out the top half of the Western Conference. Right now, if I gave you $300, who are you taking in the West?
Right now, I'm taking the Denver Nuggets to go back-to-back. Just like UConn did it, now the Denver Nuggets are going to do it too. We saw it with the Golden State Warriors a few years ago, and I just believe in this Nuggets team. When it comes to their depth, they've got a lot of grit. They've got a lot of blue-collared style of players, and they're very good with their endurance and keeping up with that hustle. And it just shows you don't need a bunch of star power names to be able to win an NBA championship. Jokic and then a few C-level, B- level guys are enough outside of Jamal Murray, who I would say is in that second tier of guards when he stays healthy. So I'm putting that $300 on Denver right now.
Is there anybody else in the West that you look at and say, yeah, we're sleeping on?
I want to say the Oklahoma City Thunder are a team that people, because you see it in the odds, that people don't believe in this team. And I kind of agree with the thought that I've been reading about, is that they're a little bit too inexperienced, too young. They need some of that playoff reps in order for them to be able to compete. However, the reason that they're there and the reason that they've been at the top of the Western Conference is because they're pretty darn good and they've got a whole lot of depth. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is just a complete stud, and Josh Giddey matches him by playing good defense on the perimeter. So I'd say them. And I don't like betting on this team, because whenever you have to bet on the health of Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, then it's almost a losing bet 99 out of 100 times. But if this Clippers team can stay healthy, which for the most part they have this year, also with more offense with James Harden there, the defense that you're getting from Russell Westbrook, if they can keep it all together, as fragile as they are, they can give Denver a run for their money. But I got Denver here going back to the NBA Finals.
Follow him on Twitter at Fensty Sports. Obviously, check him out Monday through Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy. We appreciate your time, brother. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me again.
Samich, I just got to be honest, man. There's no way I can trust the Clippers. I want to trust the Clippers. I should trust the Clippers. I can't trust the Clippers. Like, I can't trust Harden to not just forget how to play basketball at some point.
I feel like I need to bet someone to win the NBA title outside of my current 175-1 Magic ticket, which, let's be honest, it's a pipe dream. The Clippers is in second at 10-1, and the Bucks third at 15-1 seems absolutely wild to me. I don't trust this Clippers team at all. You're telling me Doc Rivers all of a sudden figure it out with this Milwaukee team? No, he's not. The third and fourth choices have zero chance of winning the title.
Yeah, we'll keep breaking down all the odds again. It's a wild day in the NBA. But coming up, good news, bad news. We'll look at some headlines next on VSiN. Stick with it.